Hello all, this is Dennis from Conquering Cuisine, back with our second episode of Lessons at the Table, short video vignettes where we talk about a component of one of the meal packages that's going out. Tomorrow we have the first of two Memorial Day themed packages, and we thought we'd focus on one of the components. As you may or may not be aware, we do a lot of different dinner packages here at the store, but primarily we are also a cooking school, and we're trying to use these videos as a way to reinforce the cooking aspect of it, to give you a little bit more insight, maybe learn something about the meal you're having. All our packages are fresh and made daily, so we're making all the components of the dishes, so it's easy for us to show you a little bit more about it. And while we love that you'd order them from us, there's times you may want to experiment at home, and hopefully this gives you a little bit more confidence to do that. So the thing that we picked today was ribs, because I think for some that might be a little bit more challenging. We use two different cuts of ribs here at the shop. We use baby back ribs, which are the most popular ribs here in the States, and we also use a St. Louis style rib. The difference between these two is just where it comes from on the rib cage. The baby back ribs come from a little bit higher up on the animal, closer to the spine, and the St. Louis style are just a cut of the spare rib. So it's a little bit more uniform cut. You can see they have a flatter shape to them. The baby back ribs are a little more curved, which make it a little bit easier in cooking with the St. Louis style, because a lot of times they'll fit in the racks a little bit easier than the baby backs will. So we got to prep these, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how we smoke them, and then I'd also thought it'd be nice if we just made a quick barbecue sauce that we'll serve with them. Now, some people like the ribs dry, and that's perfectly fine. Others like to add sauce. Some people like to slather it on. So that's all your personal taste. Much like which rib you choose to use is really based on which one you prefer. There's not one is better than the other. Some may say that the St. Louis have a little bit more flavor to them, but the baby backs do cook a little bit quicker, and they also do have a little bit higher meat to bone ratio. So when you're serving them, you get a little bit more yield out of them. Anyway, we're going to start by making our dry rub for this. Our dry rub is a very simple mix of different spices. We often tell people, rather than go out and get a pre-done dry rub, just do one for your at home on your own. Oftentimes the spices that you're going to use in it are in your cupboard, and it gives you an opportunity to use those up. So we have a little bit of paprika, a little bit of onion powder, a little oregano, cumin, a little dry mustard, salt, black pepper, and a little bit of cayenne to give it just a little bit of kick. And this is our base all-purpose rub. I would use this on anything. But to this, we're going to add a little bit of sugar to give it the sweetness that we associate with when we smoke baby back ribs. Into our bowl, and then here we have a raw sugar, or a demerara sugar, that we're going to use. And this is a nice coarse sugar that we're going to go in to the mix with. You could also use brown sugar if you prefer brown sugar. A little bit of a stir just to make sure this is mixed. We won't need all this spice rub for these ribs. What I'll do with the remainder is just store it in an airtight container, and it's ready for the next time that I'm going to use it. And if you use a lot, just amp up your quantities and keep a nice container of it ready to go for all the things that you're going to grill during the summer. We're going to put this recipe for the dry rub, and we're also going to put the recipe for the sauce. We're going to post that at our website, so you'll be able to grab either of them if you choose. It'll be at conqueringcuisine.com, and then under our blog tab, you'll find our recipes. When we season the ribs, we want to season them with a nice amount. We have a fairly high sugar to salt ratio. Different recipes will give you, some will make the rub a little bit sweeter, others will be a little bit less sweet. Again, you can play with, that's one of the nice things when you make your own spice rubs, you can play with the ratio and you can add and take away things that you like or don't like. We generally do this the day before, and we let it sit overnight in the refrigerator. It has a chance for the salt and the sugar to kind of cure the meat, and I think you get a little bit more flavor when you go and smoke it. But if you needed to do it last minute, that's not a problem. And these are ready to go. And we'll set those off to the side. When you go to cook ribs, ribs are a tough cut of meat. There's a lot of cartilage in between the bones and the meat, and it's really important that you cook it low and slow. We have a smoker set up outside, and we smoke over mesquite wood, but hickory, apple, cherry, they're all perfectly good hardwoods to use as well. The average temperature that you want to keep these ribs at is between 200 and 225. Try not to ever let it get above 250. We want to really allow the smoke to have time to permeate the meat and that cartilage to break down and become nice and tender. Generally, for baby back ribs, 4 to 5 hours is what I look to smoke them for. For the St. Louis style, you're probably going to need an extra hour or so. But you'll know when the meat starts to pull away from the bone and the bone is clean. That's a good indication that they're ready to go. Make sure if you pierce it with a knife, it's nice and tender, and you'll have a perfectly cooked rib at the end. I tend to not like them where they're just completely falling off the bone and mushy. I like to have a little bit of texture to them. That might be a half-hour difference in cooking. If you like them more tender, then cook them a little bit longer. With this, we're going to serve a nice Memphis-style barbecue sauce. And we differentiate Memphis style from Kansas City style or even a Texas style. Generally, is a little bit of kick to it, and it is a little less sweet. And that's how I prefer my barbecue sauces. If we have recipes also for Kansas City style, and we'll post one of those as well, so you have the contrast in the two different recipes. But we're going to go with a Memphis style today. I have a stainless steel saucepan set up here, and generally when we do sauces like this, we want to use what's called a non-reactive saucepan, which is stainless or enamel. We don't want it to be a cast iron or aluminum. You might get a little bit of flavors off that pan in your sauce. We have our molasses here. A little bit of Worcestershire sauce, soy sauce. This is a A1 steak sauce, but any steak sauce will do. Just gives it an extra depth of different spices and flavors in there. We need to balance a lot of the sweetness that we're going to put in this with a little bit of vinegar. So we're going to use apple cider vinegar in this one. A little bit of Dijon mustard. You can also use yellow mustard if you don't have Dijon on hand. A little bit of lemon juice, again in the same category as our apple cider vinegar. We want to make sure that we get a little bit of acidity out of that. And then just some Coca-Cola. Just a cup of Coca-Cola gives it a nice little, it's the hidden ingredient in there that gives it a little bit of extra flavor, a little bit of extra sweetness, and just a little bit of sharpness to the tongue. You can make this as hot as you want spice-wise. I am going to add a couple dashes of Tabasco, but hold off on adding too much because we can always add more, but we don't want it too spicy in the beginning because we won't be able to take that spice out. We're using just a portable burner for this just to show you, but we're going to bring this up to temperature slowly. There's a lot of sugar in this, so we don't want a real high heat, and we won't want to cook it for a long time because we risk that the sugars in there are going to go from nicely cooked to burnt. So we're really careful with our temperature. That's what's nice about using a nice heavy saucepan like this. It allows us to control that temperature and make sure we don't burn it. One last note that we're going to talk about is, we talked about the wood chips a little, but there's one extra step that you need to take. In that if we put these in our smoker as is, they'll burn very quickly. We will get smoke, but we won't get smoke for as long a period of time. Take your wood chips out, soak them in warm water for half an hour to 40 minutes before they go in the smoker box. That way when they come up to temperature in the smoker box and they start to smolder and start to smoke, they'll last for a little bit longer. We use it, like I said, we're using Mesquite here today. You do not have to have a dedicated smoker to do what we're doing here. If all you have is a grill, you can easily do it on a propane grill as well. Most propane grills have a smoker box these days, but if not, you can buy them as a separate attachment. Get your chips set up in your smoker box over your direct heat, which is your flame, and set up your ribs on the indirect portion. So if your barbecue is zoned, just make sure that you have real low heat or no heat in one area and you've got your heat coming from the other. That way your chips will smoke and your meat's not directly cooking over that intense heat. And then just be careful to check your grill temperature periodically to make sure that you're in that 200 to 225 degree range. If you have any questions on what you saw here today, keep in mind that you can always email us at foodie@conqueringcuisine.com. And also, that's a great place to see about all the things we're doing. It's not only about the meal packages that we have going on right now, but as we start to get our cooking classes back online, we'll post all the information about the schedule there as well. I know we're spending this Memorial Day a little differently than we have in the last few years, but hopefully whether you're down the shore or whether you're here in Doylestown, hopefully you're spending it with family and you're enjoying your holiday weekend. Thank you.
Awesome.